Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today's video is going to be a mastering chain rundown for a UKGarage track by Tova Brown. This is brought to you via her label, Big Drum Records. Big shout out to all of them for letting me use this for the video. So we're going to go through all of my plugins and analog chain settings that I use to master this mix. All right, welcome into the mastering session. So we're going to run through each thing in my chain. We're going to kind of build up the processing as I do when I master. This is going to be relatively quick and concise. If you guys are interested in a sort of like live mastering session video, let me know in the comments down below. I would be totally down to do something like that if you want to kind of get more of my live reaction, live thought process when I'm mastering. So here we go. So the first thing I did here was I used a high pass filter to roll off some lows from the side image here, just up until about 20 Hertz. And then I added a little bit of a bump in the mids at 172. I found this added a bit of definition to the bass and thump to the kick. So let's take those in and out really quick and hear what that sounds like. So let's start with this. This is just to tighten up the bass a little bit. Hear it get more focused, especially on monitors. All right, here's that out. Listen to come out. A little more thumpy. And important to note as well, I have this on natural phase. From there, I kind of, my thought process with this was just kind of focusing low end. So after I've done that sort of clinical processing in ProQ3, I went ahead and added some enhancement using Waves RBass, Renaissance Bass. I love this plugin for mastering. Hear how much weight that adds? Out. Back in. All right, so that one's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, I'm just hitting it at 60 Hertz to add some really nice thump and fullness to the low end. And then from there, kind of controlling that, tightening it, I use Ozone's low end focus. I kind of used, just initially hit the deep clean preset and then adjusted it a little bit. So let's hear what I'm doing there. All right, let's bring it in. Hear it just kind of get evened out. I really love using this plugin after RBass to kind of help just add that final bit of control and tightness to the low end, because sometimes RBass can get a little bit unwieldy. So this helps kind of lock it in. After that, we go ahead and hit my analog chain. So let's take a look and see what we're doing there. Okay, so our first stop is going to be the MagicPre. Then we hit our Vertigo VSC-3, and then we hit the Manley, and then the Bettermaker. So the MagicPre just gets us some nice level, and I use my vintage Neve transformers for this one. So let's go ahead and play the song and hear what that does. I'll first actually hit it in discrete mode just so you can hear the jump in level, and then once your ears get accustomed to that, we'll switch in the transformer so you can hear the change in tone as well. All right, let's go. Hear that nice thickness to the low end the Neve adds? Let's switch back to discrete. Okay, let's bring in the compressor. Immediately you can hear the punch it adds. So just going for around 1 to 2 dB of compression at the most here. I've got a ratio of 8. The slowest attack at 40 milliseconds, get the most transient possible, and the fastest release at 0.05 to get the most transparent sound. And then I just brought up the gain until it sounded good. Out. In. I've got it on peak, and I've got the sidechain on 90 Hertz to let that bass and kick really come through. Out. I've got a whole video coming out on the VSC-3 soon. I love the weight and the presence and the punch that this thing can add while still kind of seeming transparent enough where I'm not kind of, it's not pushing the high end or the mids or the lows in a weird place. So I'm super happy with what this adds. So moving on from there, we hit the Manley. So before I individually bring in all of the boosts that I do want to note that I don't use any of the high or low pass filters, and I am cranking the gain quite a bit on here to really add some nice tube saturation. So when I bring in the Manley, you'll hear another jump in level here. In. Hear that thump, that presence? All right, 27K, some air, some sparkle, bell boost, 10K for vocals, and more sparkle. Let's take it out. In. And then some 2.7K for the drums. And the organ, keyboards too. Really, I'm just using it to kind of enhance the mids and highs on this track. So again, that sort of 2.7K just brought out the synths and the drums in a nice way, and then just adding some sort of sparkle at 10K and 27K. The 27K is really just a magical setting on the massive passive. You'd think it's outside of the range of human hearing, but because of the nature of the bell or the shelf curve, you're kind of naturally bringing up the audible end of the top end in a nice way when you in that range. So that is almost on every master for me that needs it anyway. So for moving on to the Bettermaker, we're actually going to go ahead and just look at the computer screen for that since it's got the nice plug-in control. So let's take a look. So here is the Bettermaker limiters plugin section. So I'm actually not really using it much as a limiter here. I've got the clipper setting on it, blended to about 75% here. So I'm mostly using it to sort work as a gain staging thing and nicely sort of enhance and clip off, you know, the waves coming back into the helo, into the computer. So just looking at my settings here, I'm adding about 2 dB of gain to kind of push into the clipper. The clipper itself I have on the saturation and hard clip settings, and I'm trimming the waves by about 0.5 dB. And then I'm adding a decent amount of width here, 2.3 dB. It uses mid-side processing for that. And then I have the intelligent release, and then a high-pass side chain of 90 hertz, just kind of making sure that that little bit of limiting that is blended in is still letting the low end to pass through in a nice way. And I get gain reduction range at 2 dB just to ensure that, you know, if the limiter is getting activated, it's not going crazy or making some weird pumping thing happen. I'm also using the color in here, which I'll take in and out. So we'll start with it out, but to quickly go over what I'm doing here, I've got it on the stereo linked mode here. So I'm adding 10% drive at a 20% mix at 125 hertz, and then 30% to 15% mix at 20K. So just again, adding a little bit more punch and sparkle, just pretty subtly blended. So here we go. Color out. Hear that jump in level? Again, it's just kind of, now at this point, I'm really just thinking about adding final enhancements and really working on building up that final level of loudness for release. So after the Bettermaker, we go ahead and hit another one of my favorite plugins. I love hitting this right after my analog chain, the UAD ATR-102 tape machine. So this kind of helps just round things out, especially in the top end, and add some nice tape compression and presence. So let's go ahead and bring that in here. You can actually make the track a little bit quieter. I'm using that to kind of gain stage into the rest of my final processing here. But it does help, I've noticed, kind of tame the bass again. From adding that thump, you know, I am trying to now just kind of focusing it in a little bit more so that it doesn't get too blown out following the rest of my final digital processing. So from here, I move into a bit of multi-band dynamic processing with Ozone's Dynamics plugin. So let's take a look at that. I use the Housemaster preset and then modify it based off of the song. So let's take a listen to that. Out. Hear all that depth and width it's adding? I use this preset all the time for garage music. It is super, super helpful. It just adds incredible punch and just this really nice 3D quality. You can probably hear how much it enhances sort of the wider things in the mix. So it kind of, the original preset has everything kind of on 100%, so it's kind of all serial processing, but I kind of pull it all down to be pretty parallel, or at least 3/4 parallel, and mess around with the threshold on the compressor just to make sure that I have that at a good level, and I mess around with the actual bands here to make sure it makes sense for this. But all the other settings on this are honestly really, really nice. I mean, you can hear the difference it makes. So moving on, we hit our last little 3 processors here. So I've got an instance of Inflator, another one of my favorite plug. I've got the effect on 50% and the curve on -32. It just adds a really nice subtle warmth and enhancement to quiet details, as you'll. Again, just nice enhancement, and I'm pushing into it a little bit, but I'm also pulling down the output to manage my gain staging into the final bit of limiting. So I actually have my limiting here split across 2 different limiters, 2 instances of Ozone's Maximizer. The first one I have a little bit more intense with a faster character, a little bit of gain, and I have it on IRC3, so the pumping. I'm adding some upward compression, medium soft clipping, and quite a bit of transient emphasis and stereo independence here. And then moving into the next one, even more gain, but a slower character, less upward compression, more transparent soft clipping, or just less intense, and a little bit less transient emphasis with the same amount of stereo independence. So I guess 10% less. So let's first just bring in the first one, and I'll bring in the second after, and you can kind of hear how it adds that final bit of loudness and enhancement. All right, here comes the first one. Now you can really get that final finish punch. There's the finished product. So there you go. That's a look into my chain for this UKGarage track by Tova Brown. Let's actually go ahead and run through the entire chain really quickly. I'm just going to literally bring in every unit sequentially in pretty quick succession, just so you can kind of hear the layers build up in a really quick way, just to kind of hear how all of these parts really create a greater sum. Okay, here we go. You might hear some clicks and pops as certain things get engaged, but I'm going to bring in every single layer of my mastering chain here so you can quickly hear a start to finish master. Let's go. Okay, now I'm going to just quickly print the song here, and then we will compare the mix and master and kind of go between the two. All right, so we've printed the song. Normally I'd add some fades here and, get exporting and whatnot. I suppose on the topic of exporting, I should also mention that, of course, I had the output level on my final limiter set to -0.25, and I was adding dither as well, but we're really just kind of focused on the mastering chain for this video anyways. But we're going to go ahead and compare the mix to the master now. So we will be able to hear that. I'm not going to gain match these, I'm sorry, but this is more so about how you can see what I'm doing with the level of processing and build up. So, you know, you'll at least be able to hear how a mix really turns into a master and what the difference is between the two. So let's go ahead and take a good old listen. Close your eyes. Thank you all for watching the video. If you have any questions on any part of my thought process or settings or whatever I did throughout this video, you can reach out to me in the comments or using the contact information I've left in the description down below. And if you have any other questions about music or audio or whatever, you just want to connect, don't be afraid to hit me up. Thanks for watching.